There are no stakes in MMA quite like those found in a UFC title fight, and for this video, we're going to celebrate fighters who, against all odds, somehow found a way to win. These are some of the greatest UFC title fight comebacks in MMA history. Brock Lesnar versus Shane Carwin. Brock Lesnar is a 1 in a billion athlete, a truly massive person who managed to achieve tremendous success in mixed martial arts, despite having very little combat experience prior to his debut. The entirety of his UFC run is a must-watch in terms of spectacle, but for us, his shining moment came when he was tasked with taking on the unbeaten knockout artist Shane Carwin. 12 wins and 12 finishes had led Carwin to his first shot at UFC gold, and for the opening round, it really looked like his devastating power was proving to be too much for the champion. Lesnar has been criticized before for his ability to convincingly take damage, but in this bout, he was forced to absorb more of it than ever before. And when the time came for him to turn it all around, it was truly stunning to watch. Once Carwin started to fade in the second round, Brock Lesnar started to up the ante, taking the challenger down and eventually submitting him with an arm triangle. It was a shocking come-from-behind victory, and one that earned Brock Lesnar respect from the fans. Matt Hughes versus Frank Trigg 2. Dana White has often mentioned this as his favorite UFC fight of all time. Matt Hughes and Frank Trigg had some genuine bad blood between them heading into their second meeting, and with the welterweight title on the line, tensions were at an all-time high. In the opening round, Trigg caught Hughes in the groin with a hard knee, and somehow the referee didn't notice, allowing Trigg to pour some huge pressure on the champion. With Hughes compromised, Trigg moved to top position and began looking for a fight-ending submission. The problem? Well, Hughes was slowly working through the effects of the low blow, and as soon as he regained his composure, he flipped Trigg off of him, scooped him up, lifted him into the air, and ran the length of the octagon just to slam him down again. It was easily one of the most insane moments in UFC history, and once he established control, Hughes started to rain down punishment before cinching in a rear naked choke to seal the comeback. Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier 2. Mid-fight adjustments are often the thing that make championship fighters great, and for Stipe Miocic, his legacy as a heavyweight great was already set in stone by the time he rematched Daniel Cormier at UFC 241 in an attempt to win back his belt. Cormier left us stunned in their first fight by knocking Miocic out in the opening round, and when their second meeting came, it really did look as though Cormier was proving himself to be the better man. Stipe just couldn't get his game going in the opening exchanges, and by the time the middle portion of the fight came, DC was starting to take over. But then, out of nowhere, Miocic noticed a flaw in Cormier's game. He had trouble defending body shots, and as soon as he implemented punches to the midsection, Cormier quickly began to fade. By the end of the fourth round, Stipe was all over the champion, eventually finishing him via TKO just before the round ended. It was an incredible comeback to win back the heavyweight title and set the stage for a trilogy bout which Miocic won by decision. Yuri Prohaska versus Glover Teixeira. When the 42-year-old Glover Teixeira faced off against Yuri Prohaska at UFC 275 to defend his newly won title, I don't think anyone could have predicted the incredible performance the two would deliver. It was a fight filled with shocking moments as Glover managed to outperform the limitations of his age by engaging in an all-out war with the much younger challenger. They really put on a show over the 5 scheduled rounds, and though Yuri was the one who had age on his side, Teixeira was finding his mark over and over again, staggering the challenger repeatedly. In the final round, Glover stepped on the gas once again, catching Prohaska with the type of shots that would have easily dropped lesser fighters. But Yuri wasn't ready to give up, and in the final minute of the fight, when Teixeira's energy had all but left him, Prohaska somehow found his way to the back, locking up a rear naked choke that forced the tap from the champion. It was a thrilling fight with an epic conclusion, especially given the fact that Teixeira had never been submitted before and had far more jiu-jitsu experience. Miesha Tate versus Holm. Miesha Tate was caught in the unfortunate position of being number 2 to the great Ronda Rousey for several years. Though they fought twice, Miesha could never get the better of the legendary Olympian. But when Holm ended her reign with the head kick heard round the world, it opened the door for Miesha Tate to capture the belt. A fight between the heavily favored Holm and the veteran Miesha Tate was set up for UFC 196, and for the majority of the fight, aside from one very strong round from Tate, it looked as though Holm was about to double down on her status as one of the sport's fastest growing stars. But in the final 5 minutes, Miesha came out with a sense of urgency, scoring a huge takedown in the final 2 minutes. She then moved directly to the back and found the rear naked choke that would put Holly out a few seconds later. It was an iconic moment and the perfect way to cap off her long road to UFC gold. Frankie Edgar versus Maynard 2. Frankie Edgar's Edgar's insane trilogy of fights with Gray Maynard deserves a video of its own, and though major momentum swings were found throughout, we're going to focus in on the second fight, which took place at UFC 125. 10-7 rounds are not usually given in MMA, but if there was ever an argument for a round being scored like that, it was the opening round of their rematch. Gray Maynard clearly had the power advantage over the much smaller Frankie Edgar. Edgar's ability to take damage is, of course, legendary, but even the most resilient fighters on the planet would have been finished by the strikes he absorbed. But Frankie somehow found a way, trusting his toughness and his cardio, and he eventually worked his way back into the fight. In the end, the bout was declared a draw. This set up a third fight between the two, a fight that was once again for the lightweight title. Just like before, Frankie was hurt badly in the opening round, but history repeated itself in the trilogy bout, and by the time the fourth round came, Edgar moved in to score a TKO finish, ending their rivalry once and for all. Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. In truth, Charles Oliveira has had several remarkable comebacks during his last 3 fights, but for this video, we'll be focusing on his title bout with Michael Chandler, which took place at UFC 262. While he did manage to get off to a solid start, briefly taking Chandler's back, Chandler eventually scrambled out of it and connected with a massive right hand that dropped Oliveira to the mat. Although Chandler followed up with some heavy ground and pound, nearly ending the fight, Charles Oliveira somehow survived to see the second round. Once round 2 got underway, Oliveira caught Chandler with a vicious left hook, swarming him with a flurry of punches to earn a TKO win. It was not only an incredible comeback victory, but also one that earned him the lightweight title. Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman. Up next is the most recent entry on our list, the star-making moment for England's Leon Edwards. Although Leon Edwards lost his initial bout with Kamaru Usman back in 2015, he managed to rise back up through the rankings, winning 9 fights in a row to earn a rematch with the Nigerian Nightmare at UFC 278, this time for the welterweight title. Despite a strong opening round, things were not progressing well for Edwards as the fight carried on. Usman's trademark pace and pressure were leaving Leon with less and less success as the rounds passed by. And when the 5th round came, the commentary team of Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier were even criticizing the challenger for how broken he looked. Then, out of nowhere, Leon set up and threw a head kick that would change his life forever. Not only did he manage to earn UFC gold and put the best fighter in the sport out cold, but he did so in the final minute of a fight he was losing convincingly. Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen. And finally, we come to perhaps the most iconic late fight Hail Mary finish of all time. Anderson Silva was expected to run through the loudmouthed contender Chael Sonnen when this fight was set up for UFC 117. Silva was a dominant champion at 185 pounds, and Chael, despite being a respectable fighter, was known more for his trash talking than his actual results in the cage. But against all odds, Sonnen came out guns blazing, dominating Anderson for the majority of the 5-round fight, using his high-pressure wrestling and top game. But Silva was no ordinary fighter, and even with the certainty of defeat in front of him, he was able to rally and find his way to a triangle choke. Chael did his best to fight out of the submission, but was unable to create any space. The tap came moments later, and Anderson Silva left with his title reign intact. But more importantly, he scored perhaps the most famous comeback victory in UFC history. As always, if you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Apart from that, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.